The significance of the Gears of War franchise cannot be understated, even though it has faced the challenges with newer entries like many other popular series have unfortunately fallen to. However, the first Gears of War game, which released all the way back in 2006, remains a landmark title in gaming history. And with the announcement of Gears of War E-Day game coming soon, I decided to go back to where it all began to see just how well or bad this absolute classic of a game had aged. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hammer of Dawn satellites are online. Plug those grub holes and prepare to rev your Chainsaw Lancer bayonet as we go back to Gears of War. Oh, and make sure you stay all the way to the end of this video because there's something at the end that I want to show you, and no, it's not a sponsorship or anything like that. Now, Gears of War was one of the first games to showcase the capabilities of the Unreal Engine 3. Gears of War featured a groundbreaking graphics for its time. Its high-definition visuals revolutionized console gaming and set a new standard for graphic fidelity and design in the entire industry. The game's cover-based shooting system was a pioneering feature that has become a staple in many third-person shooters now. The innovative mechanics of cover, blind firing, and tactical positioning influenced countless games that followed, cementing Gears of War as a trend center in the gameplay design. Now, before we dive deep into the Locust tunnels, let's rewind back nearly 20 years ago to 2006. I was just a young boy that was yet to really get hardcore into gaming, but that would happen in part thanks to this game, Gears of War. Anyway, the Xbox 360 at the time was new, and the only time I had played on one of those consoles was at my dad's friend's place, because back at home I was still playing on the PlayStation 2. All of that would change when my dad decided to get an Xbox 360 for ourselves, and a friend of mine at school got one as well, and the first game he got was Gears of War. And after school one day, I went over to his house and we played Gears of War multiplayer against each other. I had absolutely no idea how to play the game, as this was my first time playing, and my friend was very familiar with the game and its mechanics. Even though I got absolutely whooped in these matches, I was instantly drawn to this game, as I had never played something like this before, but this wasn't an awakening of the dedicated gamer in me. Fast forward a few days later, my dad got a copy of Gears of War, and it was time to experience the game for myself. And holy shit, what a game it was. Dark, gritty, violent, at times a little bit scary, heroic, and above all, just fucking awesome. I can remember running out of my room to get my dad's attention to show him the main character, Marcus Fenix, using a chainsaw bayonet to kill a wretch. I was so happy showing my dad the blood splatter on the screen and was ecstatic as Marcus was mutilating. I then smiled and nodded at my dad, and he just smirked and giggled and said, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." The amount of fun times I had playing this game, both solo and with others, seriously cannot be stressed enough. For many people, in many ways, this was the game that really pushed us more into gaming. But why was that? Well, that's because Gears of War introduced a robust cooperative campaign mode, which allowed two players to experience the story together either via split screen or online multiplayer. There were even parts where the players could go down separate routes and have to take some action so the other player could proceed. Playing solo, these sections just had the AI doing their role, and this was a significant innovation at the time, offering a shared narrative experience that was both engaging and fun. The cooperative gameplay fostered a sense of camaraderie and teamwork, making the game not just about the individual skill, but also about how well players could work together to overcome the challenges they faced. And within the gaming community, characters like Marcus Fenix and his iconic chainsaw bayonet became cultural icons. The game's distinctive aesthetic, combining grim environments with powerful characters, left a lasting impression and became synonymous with the franchise. And speaking of powerful characters, the main cast of Delta Squad really feels like a squad of 80s action heroes. Every character felt like they were from an 80s action movie in this game. All the men were jacked and overfilling with testosterone and masculinity, very reminiscent of the squad in the first Predator movie. And just like the first Predator movie, having the men being very masculine also helped push the threat that was the Locust Horde. Look at how badass these guys were, and yet they were still losing the war. It's stuff like this that really helps push the Locust as a serious threat in this universe. And on top of that, Gears of War also had an exceptional audio design and a powerful soundtrack that added depth to its action-packed dramatic scenes, enhancing the overall immersive experience. Personally, I particularly enjoy how heroic music briefly plays at the end of combat, deepening the sense of triumph following a victory over the Locust. The complete success of Gears of War bolstered the Xbox 360's position in the console market and helped expand Microsoft's gaming community. The game launched a lucrative franchise that included numerous sequels, books, comics, and there's even discussions about potential movie adaptations. And last I heard, Netflix was working on some Gears of War content. And in the early days of console esports, Gears of War attracted a dedicated and passionate following. Its competitive multiplayer modes were regularly featured in various gaming leagues and tournaments, further solidifying Gears of War's legacy in the competitive gaming scene. And even just playing non-competitive multiplayer offered hours upon hours upon hours of joy. Now, unfortunately for this video, I was unable to find a match online. I was hoping that with the announcement of Gears of War E-Day, maybe players would populate the servers. However, I couldn't find a match, unfortunately. Now, with all of that said, it's time to talk about what made Gears of War truly stand out, the campaign, and let's see if this game has truly stood the test of time. Let's begin. The game opens 14 years after Emergence Day, the day the Locust rose and slaughtered humanity, basically. A former soldier named Marcus Fenix is freed from the Jacinto maximum security prison by his close friend Dominic Santiago, who needs Fenix's help in his fight against the Locust. The level also serves as the tutorial to get players acquainted with the game's mechanics, including cover system that was revolutionized in this game, allowing the player to slam into cover, and I mean they really slam into cover in this game, and be able to reposition themselves and even move to another piece of cover by pointing in the appropriate direction and pressing a single button. We were also introduced to what is called the roadie run, which served as the game's sprint mechanic by having the character crouch low and sprint. And it also showed us the reload minigame, which truly is a staple of this entire franchise. It was a risk-reward mechanic that when completed successfully can speed up a weapon's reload speed and grant a bonus, such as increased headshot damage or something like that. But on the flip side, if you failed, it would result in the weapon jamming and take a longer to reload than it usually would. This level also serves to show the variety of the Locust Horde, which will become more evident as the game progresses. And right from the jump, the game pulls you in with its dark atmosphere and being a very masculine game, and that the main character Marcus Fenix has been through a whole lot during this war. In just the second level of the entire campaign, we are given a very clear objective to rescue Alpha Squad and secure a device known as the Resonator, a device intended to map the Locust underground tunnel network for a light mass bombing. Now, the light mass bomb is a weapon designed to destroy the Locust where they live. Early on in the game, the cast of Delta Squad consists of Marcus, Anthony Carmine, Dominic Santiago, of course, and Min Young King, who serves as the leader of Delta Squad. However, some of these guys would not last very long, as the world of Gears of War is a very dangerous one, to say the least. First to go is Anthony Carmine, who gets shot in the head from a Locust sniper in a cutscene. Killing off one of the members of Delta Squad this early into the game really pushes forward even more so that no one is safe in this campaign. And this also does help reinforce yet again that the Locust Horde is a serious threat. And now with the death of Anthony Carmine, Delta Squad has no choice but to keep pushing forward to Alpha Squad. More on the way, they encounter Private Augustus Cole, a character that would go on to become a fan favorite throughout the franchise. Cole was a famous pro sports player before the Locust War.
We saw you play.
That's right, everybody wants to see the train, baby.
He is energetic, enthusiastic, and highly optimistic. He has a larger-than-life persona and is known for his charisma and confidence.
Hey, stupid! You want some of this? Come and get me!
Which would end up being the perfect counter to the other prominent member of Alpha Squad, and that being Damon Baird, who is a technical expert and an engineer with a knack for machinery and technology. He is also much more cynical, sarcastic, and pragmatic. He tends to be more serious and skeptical compared to Cole's upbeat nature, and these two combined it's like the perfect buddy cop combination. However, I'm jumping forward a little bit. Back with Delta Squad and Cole, it's around this time we get to use one of the franchise's most iconic weapons, the Hammer of Dawn. The Hammer of Dawn is a satellite-based weapon that requires the player to aim a targeting laser at the intended target. Once the target is locked, the satellite aligns to deliver a powerful energy beam. The trade-off to this destructive weapon is that it requires to be used in an open field with a satellite connection, so it's useless if there is no satellite coverage. The Hammer of Dawn is used to kill enemies called Seeders that are blocking all COG, which is the Coalition of Ordered Governments. All their transmissions are being blocked in the area. One thing I always loved about this game and ended up appreciating a whole lot more on this recent replay was the fact that the game starts most of its subsequent missions. For the most part, they just start as the act is playing out. Opening a door and walking through it could be the start of the next mission. So you could just go from one battle, clear out a group of locusts, walk through the door, and you're already in the next level. No loading screen, you might get like a loading pause or something like that, but it just flows the story a little bit more. And this also helps to keep the player engaged with the story flow and the overarching act, with most of the extended cutscenes taking place between acts to show a transition of time and traveling. As we get towards the end of the first act, Delta meets up with the rest of Alpha Squad and secures the Resonator, only for a Locust attack to take place. Now, this scene back in the day blew everyone away, and I can confidently say after replaying the game recently, it's still amazing. As the attack from the Locust plays out, it is being narrated by a female character who we do not know and can't see on screen, at least yet.
Our strategy remains the same.
However, she is one of the most important characters in the franchise, and it does get elaborated further on. But anyway, her speech is chilling for how ruthless it is in the extermination of the human race.
Cut off the head of the snake, and the body dies.
But what makes it strange is she speaks perfectly like a human would, something that the Locusts have not been shown to be able to do. And while the speech is playing, we are now introduced to the main antagonist of the game, General Ram. His first appearance shows him towering over the common Locust and easily killing Kim, the current leader of Delta Squad. With the overwhelming Locust attack, the Gears are forced to retreat inside a building. Before they can even get their forts in order, we are now introduced to one of the most terrifying enemies in the entire game, the Berserker. This whole level plays out brilliantly. From just seeing Kim die and seeing General Ram, we are now having to maneuver around this Berserker is a great example of how to correctly change the pace of gameplay. Moments ago, we were just fighting off waves of Locust, and now we must be tactful as the Berserker, in Baird's words,
A berserker. She can hear us. She can smell us.
So the goal is to lure the Berserker outside and use the Hammer of Dawn to kill it, as normal weapons just simply will not harm it. However, we have limited time to do this as the satellite coverage is fading. This level serves as a fantastic ending to the first act of the game and establishes Marcus as the Sergeant of Delta Squad and sets up the main cast of Delta Squad going forward. That of course being Marcus, Dom, Baird, and Cole. Oh, and one last thing about the Berserker, their lore is pretty fucked up. Seriously, look into it a little bit when you get a chance. It's messed up. Anyway, after Delta Squad verifies with headquarters that the Resonator is safe, the team is told to go to an emulsion facility which is approximately 10 kilometers away from their current location, and they can use this emulsion facility to find a spot in the mines to put down the Resonator to map out the tunnels. Dom then advises that they should borrow a junker from Franklin, and Franklin is a stranded who owes Dom a favor, and this would be the quickest way to get to the mine. And without getting too deep into Gears of War lore, stranded are basically people that aren't part of the Coalition of Ordered Governments but are human. Reluctantly, Franklin does grant Dom the junker upon arriving at the camp, provided that Cole and Baird remain behind to assist in fortifying against Locust. Dom accepts, and as dusk falls, the Krill, the predatory bat-like creatures that attack everything in the dark, emerge. The two battle their way past Locust soldiers to the Aspo gas station, where the junker is being kept, with an ultraviolet light mounted on the junker that can kill the Krill, and they take it and then drive to the camp just in time and to assist defending the stranded camp from a significant Locust attack. After the crisis is under control, the team proceeds to the mining complex on board the recently acquired junker. So this act is a nice shift from the previous one as it changes the scenery and adds the Krill, which are a great enemy that help push the horror aspect of this game, which this game does best in the entire franchise. It also adds a layer of playability that is far more evident in co-op, such as the part where you use the makeshift elevator to cross the river where one person's turning the wheel and the other one can be fighting off the Locust. Also destroying the propane tanks to light up the area so you can traverse without being eaten by krill. It's not awful in solo play, but it greatly benefited from co-op. This act is also the first time we get to see boomers, who are the heavy weapon users of the Locust Horde, and who can forget their iconic catchphrase. So overall, I would say I preferred the previous act, but now on to Act 3. When Delta Squad gets to the edge of the mining complex, the junker breaks down, so they decide to walk through the abandoned building in order to reach the emulsion mine tunnels. They move towards a predetermined spot where the resonator's effects should be felt the most, all while protecting themselves from an assault of Locust. In the underground tunnels, Marcus is able to kill a corpser, and the squad eventually arrives at the location. Once they have secured the area, Baird activates the resonator device and they just manage to return to the surface. Unfortunately, very quickly the team finds out from HQ that the resonator blast produced far too little data for the light mass bomb.
What do you mean it didn't work?
But based on what Baird discovered, there appears to already be a nearly complete map of the tunnel system with information tracking back to Marcus's father, Adam Fenix, at his residence, the East Barricade Academy. Alright, Act 3 is great. It is simply great. We are introduced to 3 new enemies throughout this act, the first being the Lambert Wretch. Due to mutations, Lambert Wretches resemble regular Wretches, except they are more aggressive and more notably they explode when they are killed. And the whole Lambert thing kind of comes out of nowhere in this section and it just sort of goes away. But it will be very important in the series going forward as the story progresses in future sequels. The other new enemy we encounter is the Corpser, which technically we do see in the first level, but we don't fight it. And the Corpser is one of the most recognizable enemies in the entire Gears of War franchise, as it was seen during the iconic Mad World trailer to promote this game. The Corpser fight itself is okay, it's nothing amazing, and future boss fights both in this game and in the future of the series would do these types of scenarios better. However, the cutscene that plays upon its defeat is awesome. Marcus unflinching as the Corpser has one last attack before dying really doubles down again on how much of a badass Marcus is. And it really shows the attitude that was around gaming this era where every character was just a badass. Unlike today where they have emotions and constantly feel sad all the time without anything actually happening. The final new enemy we encounter is the Pharaon Guard. Compared to regular drones, Pharaon Guards are stronger, faster, and smarter. These characteristics, together with the iconic weapon, the torque bow they possess, makes them a formidable opponent, and who can forget that hissing sound they make. On top of the new enemies, this act also puts us underground and closer to Locust home turf. It gives the player a better understanding of how formidable the Locusts are just from their expansive tunnel network, which also means they are far more organized than the typical player initially thought they were. And the whole Locust tunnel thing, so much of this game becomes really more prominent in future sequels, which is something a lot of franchises really struggle with. Act 4 begins with Delta Squad on board a King Raven helicopter on their way to the East Barricade Academy, which is now fully controlled by the Locust and completely destroyed. It's far from the glorious manner it once was.
Well, there's a bunch of assholes with guns up here and they're trying to kill us. Bear it out.
As they make their way home to where Adam Fenix once resided, due to cedars in the area, it means traveling by air is very unsafe, so the squad is dropped off just outside the academy and must battle their way through the hordes of Locusts in order to get there. While Marcus and Dom scour the mansion for the data, Baird finds an APC at the rear that needs to be repaired, so he and Cole head off to fix it. This is when Marcus and Dom discover an underground laboratory and leave Jack, their cloaked robot, to get the data to protect the house from waves of Locust attacks. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's also this cloaked robot called Jack that follows you around, and he's mostly just there to open doors for you.
Jack, decloak and rip this door.
Jack, rip this door.
Jack,
Rip that door.
With the data downloaded and secured, Marcus and Dom sprint for the freshly fixed APC behind the manor as Jack completes downloading the tunnel blueprints, and a Brumic is already racing in their direction. Just as the Brumic breaks through, however, Delta Squad and Jack are arriving at the APC and are able to escape while being chased by this gigantic monster. This is my favorite act in the whole game. It's non-stop action and uses almost everything from the previous acts, including a second Berserker which comes out of nowhere. The battles in this act are more intense and you can feel the tension of Delta Squad as the situation is becoming increasingly more dire. It also includes the idea that Marcus's father Adam must have been someone of worthy note, which as the series goes on does get elaborated on in great detail. If I could only show one act of the campaign to someone who had no idea what Gears of War is, this is the act I would show. Everything is just escalated in this act and it sets up the final act perfectly. And that brings us to as Delta Squad races to the train station to board the armored freight train, which is transporting the light mass bomb. They are hampered along the route by the open bridge with malfunctioning controls because of fallen power lines. They manage to bring down the bridge and reach the station by using the Brumic's fried body to link the two transformers. The Locust attack them at the station, preventing Cole and Bear from boarding the train as it speeds past, leaving only Marcus and Dom to fight their way to the front of the train as it travels across the wasteland towards the Locust stronghold. Marcus and Dom confronted and managed to overcome General Ram himself, who is stationed at the head of the train and is guarding the light mass bomb. The train is speeding towards a destroyed bridge and Marcus uploads the tunnel data into the light mass bomb and activates it. Seconds before the train falls off tracks and into the emulsion below, Dom and Colonel Hoffman help Marcus escape the train by helping him jump on board to a nearby King Raven helicopter. By launching bombs into the Locust tunnels below, the light mass bomb destroys nearly all of the Krill breeding grounds as well as a significant portion of the Locust stronghold. Hoffman proclaims to the world that they have won. However, as the game ends, we hear that female voice again that we heard at Act 1.
They do not know why we wage this war.
And she is proclaiming that this war is not over.
Why we will fight and fight and fight until we win or we die.
And that the Locust victory is inevitable.
And we are not dead yet.
We also see the female, and I remember as a child being so confused the first time I saw her. She looks like a human, but is the queen of the Locust Horde? How is that possible?
A good question for another time.
What an amazing ending to a game. The scale of humanity's extinction has never felt more prevalent in the game to this point. The music truly reaching its peak in this act drives the player to keep on going despite the obstacles thrown at us by the Locust. And speaking of obstacles, this chapter has a Brumic boss fight, which originally was only available on the PC port, and fuck my life. This fight during my recent playthrough absolutely wrecked my ass to the point where I didn't know if I still had the skills to beat it.
I don't think I can do it.
Seriously, I recently played through Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree and I struggled more with this Brumic than I did with some of those bosses in the Elden Ring DLC. There is no two ways around it. This Brumic fight savaged me. After many attempts, I was able to beat it and I could feel the teenager within me being disgusted by how long this took. Not only is there a Brumic fight, but then when you get on the train, we are then encountered by the third and final Berserker of this game. And then after that, at the end of the game, we have the final boss fight, General Ram himself. And defeating him and his Krill is oh so satisfying, seeing his lifeless corpse hit the ground. But now with all that, having replayed this game's campaign and experiencing the story once again, I come back to the original question. How well has this game aged? The short answer, very well. In fact, you could say that time has only been kind to this game. Yes, the AI is noticeably below today's standards. Honestly, Dom as an AI is useless for the most part.
Fucking move, cunt!
And the whole mechanic in this game of giving squad commands is so redundant. It's very clear why that feature was dropped for the sequels. It does nothing. And some of the animations can be wonky at the best of times. However, all of this is easily forgiven for the age of this game, when everything else has aged like fine wine. Slamming into cover to then line up a headshot with the longbow is still just as satisfying as ever. The Nash's shotgun is still one of the best feeling weapons in any shooter game. If I had to summarize how this game is aged in a word, it would be satisfying. Curb stopper down to enemy, satisfying. Blood splattering on the screen from a chainsaw kill, satisfying. The unapologetic masculinity, satisfying. The banter between Delta Squad, satisfying. The torque bow, satisfying. And so on, and so on, and so on. Satisfying. There is a reason why this game was able to help push out the Xbox 360 despite being a brand new IP, and overtake Halo 2 in terms of concurrent players, which back then, before the release of Halo 3, is one hell of an impressive feat. Gears of War is a game that will always stand amongst the titans of gaming's finest titles, and we can only hope that the upcoming Gears of War E-Day game honors the legacy that this game has created, unlike some of the other sequels have. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort, so it's very much appreciated. And now for that announcement that I mentioned at the start of this video, I have already spoken with the great Skirmitar, the almighty editor, and well, we're gonna do the whole trilogy, Gears 2 and Gears 3. By the time you see this video, I might be doing a playthrough of the second game. And if these videos do end up doing well, maybe we'll consider doing other videos on some of the other games outside of the trilogy. Yay.